Hi, I'm Simon. Thanks for tuning into The Ordinary Filmmaker. Subscribe to get notification of new videos like this one so you don't miss any news, rumors, gear reviews, or tutorials. And to make things just a little bit more exciting, I'm giving away a brand new Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera to one lucky viewer. I've got the details in the description down below, or you can watch this video right here. Please look at the terms and conditions as there are some age and location restrictions. And now, for the news. Canon's plan for 2021 has changed. Now, we didn't know an awful lot about their details before, but we're being told that the pandemic and manufacturing challenges that are still raging have changed plans for 2021. Not all cameras planned for 2021 will be coming out this year, but Canon rumors didn't have the specifics. Disruptions to the supply chain are ongoing and product launches could get pushed. The 2021 Consumer Electronics Show went ahead virtually this year. Day one saw Sony introduce the AirPeak drone. It's quite a bit larger than the Mavic Pro consumer drone, but you'll be able to attach a Sony full-frame alpha camera. Canon talked about enabling mobile workers using their EOS webcam utility and the upcoming AMLOS camera system. They showed off their satellite camera technology, and they allowed the public to take photos using the satellite technology. But on day two, we saw Canon place two cameras, the D3500 and D5600, in old product status. Now this means they're being discontinued. Sigma CEO Yamaki-san gave an interview where he was a little bit vague on plans for supporting the RF and Z mounts. He used language like a possibility of introducing lenses with new mounts to such photography systems as Nikon Z and the Canon EOS R. Now, if Sigma is coming out with lenses this year, this statement doesn't really convey that message. I mean, it's a definite possibility, right? And then on day three, Sony announced the FE 35mm f1.4. f1.4, I almost said f4. Costco said they're closing all in-store photo labs by Valentine's Day, and I listed off all major 2021 photo, video, and broadcast trade shows with location information and dates. And then on day four of CES, Canon, I think they slighted Olympus. They said, JIP, the company that bought the Olympus camera business, is in the business of purchasing failing companies and turning them around, then selling them for a profit. Canon doesn't think that anyone in Japan would be interested in buying a restructured and profitable Olympus. Well, the camera division at least. I also gave an overview of what it costs to run a channel and wondered what happened to the Sony A9 Mark III announcement. And yesterday, Canon News discovered a patent for a high-speed stacked sensor that has a high chance of making it into the Canon EOS R1. Like staying informed and learning about camera gear? Well, subscribe to my channel and choose all notification to get notified as soon as I publish a video. But now, it's time to answer your questions. Got a question for next week's video? Well, post it in the comment section below and I might be answering your question next week. And now, for our first question. Corey asks, with Canon working to make an extremely affordable full-frame RP replacement and Fuji releasing a medium format camera for $59.99, do you think that with the dropping sensor costs, the photography world is going to eliminate micro four thirds and APS-C size sensors? I don't think so. Now, medium format, even myself, I'm not even looking at getting into that. I think full frame is perfect for where I am at. I've been shooting with APS-C for over 10 years and I was ready to move to full frame. But I don't think APS-C is in any way being retired anytime soon. Even with the shrinking market, I think APS-C is safe. It goes into smaller cameras, it allows for cheaper cameras. Even though there might only be $100 or $200 or $300 difference between the sensor costs, that's still pretty significant. And just think of it this way, if you've only got a $200 price difference between the cost of the two sensors, by the time you take that to retail, that price can increase to $400, and to a lot of people, that $400 makes a difference. Now let's take a look at micro four thirds. This sensor is even smaller than APS-C. And there are situations where having a smaller sensor is beneficial. First of all, you're smaller. You can fit these in smaller devices. You can use them in other devices besides just camera. So I don't really think they're going to go away anytime soon. But, and this is the big but, it really depends on what happens to the market. Will it keep contracting? Will it stabilize around 6 to 7 million units a year? Which companies are going to exit? And depending, see right now, not everybody makes micro four thirds. Canon doesn't. Sony, I don't believe they do. You've got Panasonic, you've got Olympus. Now, Olympus is in a bit of trouble. Panasonic is doing some sort of restructuring because their sales are under 5%. They're not doing very well. So I think the greatest risk would be to Micro Four Thirds, but APS-C I think is going to be around for a very long time. The car asks, what computer do you edit on? And what do you think are the best 4K video editing computers and computer parts in 2021? I currently edit on a, iMac Pro. It's a 2017 version base model. And for most situations, it's more than fast enough. But the only problem I have with that computer is that I'm stuck at a desk. I can't really move around the house. Depending on what kind of video products I'm working on, I'll grab my SSD and I'll go upstairs and work on my 2015 MacBook Pro. And sometimes I've even worked on my 2014 Mac Mini. So that's why I like to keep all the library files, everything stored on the SSD, so I've got that portability. In terms of the best computer, I didn't want to get into brand names here. I think it's more about a combination of things. You need to have good memory. You need to have, I think, at least 32 gigabytes of memory. You need a very good GPU. You also need lots of cores, and depending on what software you're working with will help drive this too. If you're using Adobe, well, Adobe's kind of like that V8 engine. As soon as you turn the car on, you're getting 1 mile per gallon without even moving. Other V8s are a little bit more efficient. Other software's more efficient. You've got Final Cut, you've got DaVinci Resolve, and others. So, but when you're building a system, these are major architecture considerations. You want good memory, reliable memory, fast memory. You want at least 32 gigabytes of memory. You want, as I mentioned, a good GPU, lots of cores. And I think that's I've kind of hit the high points there. But what also really, really matters is the container you put it in. My iMac Pro, yes, I can replace the processors. I can replace the memory, but not the SSDs. And that's very, very frustrating about Apple's ecosystem, is your inability to replace memory or storage, such as SSDs. I think that is a huge, huge limitation. And what stopped me from buying a MacBook Pro last year, because I wasn't going to spend that much money on a system where I couldn't change out the RAM if I wanted to, or I couldn't replace the SSD if it failed. So that's why I use external SSDs all the time here. If my computer goes, I can no longer access that information until I get it back. And of course, if the SSDs failed, I've lost it altogether. But I think one thing for 2021 that has me the most curious is Apple's new M chip. I was really stunned by how fast the M1 is, how fast the 3 computer platforms that came with it are. It really shocked me. So I'm really curious to see what Apple does in the higher end computers like the MacBook Pro. But I fear that Apple's going to do something stupidly Apple. I like the 15-inch screen, which is now a 16-inch screen, so I would probably default to the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But then are they going to do something stupid and say, okay, well, it's limited to 16 gigs or 32 gigs unless I do this? And that's where things get a little bit frustrating, is how, even though you can get it really cheap starting off on a 13-inch MacBook Pro, once you need certain things like a certain amount of memory, a certain amount of storage, you can be into the high expenses again, even though the chips cost a whole lot less. But I definitely think that M processor architecture, the ARM-based architecture, is really something to watch to see what Apple's doing, because everybody who's reviewed it, everybody has said it's blindingly fast. It's way faster than they imagined it would be. So that's the most exciting thing I actually am looking towards in 2021, because all these cameras that are coming out, 8K, 4K, 4K 120, all-I, C-Log, S-Log, V-Log, they produce high bit rates. They require a lot of storage and a lot of processing. So having a computer that can handle that without breaking a sweat, I think is very important. Who wants to spend $20,000 on a Mac Pro? That's just silliness. Good question. Thanks for getting me on a rant. Alumide says, I've been thinking of buying my first camera. I want a camera that will be valid even when I become a pro. I have the Mavic Air 2, and I've also been shooting with my Galaxy Note 10 phone, so I know a few things about making films. I've been thinking of getting the Canon 90D, but people seem to have mixed opinions about it from everything that I've seen on YouTube videos. Please, do you have any recommendations and advice, as the Sony A7 III is catching my eyes, but I just don't want to spend that much money? All right, well, let's look at the Canon 90D. The Canon 90D does produce good results, but I wouldn't consider this a professional camera. I'd consider this more of a hobbyist camera. You said filmmaking, so it sounds like you're primarily doing video work. And if you're with the Canon ecosystem, then probably the 90D is your best camera before you go spending money on something like an R6 or an R5. And yeah, to get that much better video than the 90D and all the capabilities that you get with a 90D, you're pretty much looking at an R6 or an R5, and that's expensive. Now, what you might want to consider, Canon's supposed to be coming out with 2 entry-level full-frame mirrorless cameras this year, one to replace the RP, and another one that's going to sit somewhere around $1,500 US. So I'd be looking for those. But if you're looking at getting outside of the Canon ecosystem, then Sony's one of the places I would look. I would also look at Nikon. The Z6 and Z7 Mark II, they're pretty good cameras. They're not top of the line, but they don't have that top of the line price either. I'd be asking you, if you were right here with me, what kind of lenses do you have? Do you have a huge inventory of lenses? If you do and they're Canon, then yeah, you probably want to stick it out with Canon. Wait about 6 months. Within 6 months, we'll either have announcements of those 2 cameras, or we'll have some leaked specifications, and that will help you a little bit. The Sony a7 III is a good camera, but it's also getting replaced relatively soon with the a7 IV. Once that announcement comes out, we'll probably see a bit of a price drop on that camera too. So, yeah. Now, see, if you were into photography, I might say take a look at the EOS R or the EOS RP, but video-wise, I'm not too happy with either of those cameras, and the rolling shutter is just absolutely just horrendous. I do wish the 90D was if the 90D was a full-frame camera, it would be incredible. Yes, it does 120 frames per second in 1080, and there is no autofocus, but you can work around that. If you're willing to accept pretty much everything within focus, then set it to something like f16, and you're not going to have any problems with your subject being out of focus, because most of what the camera's looking at is going to be in focus. So there's that. But I think the 90D is a really good camera. If you are getting the 90D, though, you do want to look at the lenses and make sure that you don't have those issues, because there are some issues with some lenses when you hook it up to the 90D. Man-Friendly Church asks, I have a Windows laptop with the i7 G8 and 24 gigabytes of RAM. Is there any way to add a GPU to the laptop to speed it up? It has only USB-C and USB 3 ports. Or should I just save up and get a separate machine just for video editing, PC and graphics cards, or even an Apple M1? That's one of the biggest problems of buying a laptop to do any sort of video editing. Very hard to scale upwards. There are some external GPUs that you can get that can hook into these things. I can't remember if yeah, it's a Windows, it's not a MacBook. But still, if you can get them for Macs, you can definitely get them for Windows. Now, you're going to pay a certain amount of money, and you're going to get a certain amount of a performance increase on that unit. The question you have to ask yourself is, when you look at how much money you have to spend to scale that performance, is it worth keeping that machine and getting that performance, or is it worth looking at something else? I'll leave that to you to decide, but if you are looking at something else, really think about your architecture. If you're on the Windows platform, and you are, then you have so many more options. You can create a desktop or server type chassis where you've got plenty of room, so if your memory dies, you can replace it. If you want to upgrade your memory, easy, no problem, you can do it yourself. Want to add more SSDs or replace your SSD? Not a problem. And that's what I really appreciate about those boxes. People who have Macs, we don't have that same level of flexibility. There's very few computers you can get that allow you to upgrade. This is why it's getting harder and harder for me to stay on the Mac. I've got a lot of software and a lot of files on the Mac platform, but this constant hammer coming down saying I can't upgrade RAM or storage or anything like that is really, really frustrating. So yeah, look at some of these external GPUs. They're not all cheap. You can spend some money for them depending on what performance you like. And of course, if your bus speed isn't that fast, then you're not necessarily going to get the full benefits from it. You might also want to start creating a capability list and looking at saying, well, okay, if I go with an external GPU, what level of performance is that going to give me? And if I go with an open box, what level of performance is that going to give me? Now again, if you look at the Apple M1, you're probably going to get a lot of really good performance there, but just keep in mind, if you go over to Apple, you've got to buy the memory you think you're going to need for the life of that computer, because there is no upgrading it. It's not like buying TVs or toasters where you don't need to upgrade. I don't know what Apple is doing. One of the reasons I came to Apple is because They just worked. They were simple. They were easy to use. If I wanted to upgrade my memory, no problem. You had the slots in the bottom. You could pop out the memory. And some of their Macs allow you to do that now. But laptops? I mean, come on, Apple. Whoa, this is just really irritates me. We don't need our laptops to be micro thin. I'm more than happy to allow for an extra 3 millimeters. Sell at this point too. In our new MacBook Pro, we're going to give you the option to upgrade your memory by yourself and your SSDs. All this in a form factor that's only 3 millimeters thicker than it is before, or 4 or 5, whatever it is. Give us that option. These are expensive laptops. They're $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 laptops. Why can't we change the memory? What is so difficult about that? It's not like these things are waterproof and you're going to ruin the case. Come on, help us out. Toss us a bone here. Jodoc asks, will there be a firmware update for the R5 and the R6 soon? Canon Rumors last year published a story saying that we're going to get it in Q1. Well, January is 2 weeks over, so that leaves us about 10 weeks. So soon, I don't know. I haven't heard any rumblings. It's supposed to happen sometime January, February, or March. I'm really hoping we get it soon, though. I'm really curious to see what C-Log 3 is like. I'm not too happy with C-Log 1. I find that, see, if I shoot in 8-bit mode, reds are reds, oranges are oranges. But when I shoot in C-Log, reds are very much orange. Like, there's a huge difference. If you look at them side by side, there's a huge difference. And I just don't feel like doing needless color correction and grading. So hopefully it does come soon, Jodoc. VAR Videography asks, is there a 4K codec on the R6 that doesn't overheat? No, there isn't. There is on the R5. So on the R5, you can record 4K, 30 frames per second, 24, 25. It's not only not going to overheat, but it's 4K. It's not oversampled. Now the R6, when it records 4K, it gives you a 5.1K oversample, and that's really nice. But it does overheat, and that's why I didn't buy the R6. When I first saw the R6 specifications back, I think it was around June, I thought, geez, maybe I'll get this instead of the R5. But when it became apparent that there was no all-I, and that there was no 4K mode where I could record unlimited, it just kind of put a hole in that for me. I didn't want to be beholden to weather. I didn't want to be forced to go down to 1080 to be able to shoot video, because that's what happens with the R6. And Cine D had that problem when they were in Japan. They were shooting with the camera. It would overheat and take forever to cool down. Now the firmware update allows them to cool down quicker, but still, that's really frustrating. The nice thing about the R5, and I'm shooting with it right now, I'm shooting it with high quality mode enabled. And what's really nice is, and this is brilliant, I just stopped it, started it again. So I've already recorded about 30 minutes. And when I started recording again, it said I had 10 minutes. Now that could mean I could record for another half an hour and another and another. You just don't know. It's hard to trust. But I could easily just, if I record for another half an hour, and I don't think I will, but if I did, I could just go to the camera and say, okay, just record 4K 30 and no big deal. Most people aren't going to notice the difference, and most of us aren't pixel peeping. But it is really frustrating that the R6 doesn't have a mode like that. I really think Canon missed the boat on a camera that costs $2,500, that you can't do 4K recording unlimited. And I'm not talking about that 30-minute stupid record limit. I think it's a little bit frustrating. And watch my video review on the R5, the R6, and the EOS R, because I talk in depth about that 30-minute record limit, why it's there, and why it's no longer needed. Kenny Peters asks, although the R5 is the best thing since sliced bread, is there anything about DSLRs that you miss? No, not at all. I was very happy with my 70D. When I first saw this question, I was thinking, well, what about battery life? Well, I shoot mostly video, so for me, the difference in battery life wasn't much. And actually, the R5 records more video, has longer battery life than the 70D does. For photos, for photographers, yeah, I think there's some definite benefits to a DSLR over a mirrorless camera. But you got to remember, I'm coming from a camera that came out in 2013 that was probably designed somewhere starting around 2011. So it was really old technology. It's hard not to go from the 70D, which was a great workhorse of a camera. It's still going. I still have it. Go from that to the Canon R5 and not be completely enamored with it. Now, I know there's other cameras out there. There's other great cameras. Sony's done a great job. Panasonic's done a great job. But I grew up in the Canon ecosystem because my brother had it, so my next reaction was to go to the R5. Now, I almost went with the A7S III, and I would have bought it if Sony hadn't dragged their heels waiting for others to catch up. I was ready to jump ship right after Canon announced the EOS R. And when they came out and announced the 90D, I knew I was ready for full frame. I was looking to see if the A7S III was anywhere in the distance, and it wasn't. And guess who came out with a camera first? Canon with the R5. So I went ahead and got the R5. Stop the FOMO asks, hey Simon, what's your take on video bitrate when rendering in Adobe Premiere Pro or any other video editing software when you have two cameras with different video bit rates? For example, if camera A shoots 4K at 100 megabits and camera B shoots 4K at 120 megabits, what video bitrate would give me the best quality when rendering? Well, I can tell by that question that you're using some sort of IPB or long-got type compression, and it's almost a trick question because you've been watching my channel long enough, and I've certainly been watching yours. And by the way, guys, take a look at Stop the FOMO. If you like technology and you want to get reviews on televisions and other stuff, listen to what he has. He has a lot of insight, but enough of the shameless plug. I shoot in all-eye all the time. I like all-eye. I just like that it gives me extra options, and I don't worry about IPB. So I wouldn't even worry about that. And IPB, generally with what I'm doing, when I'm shooting in C-Log, it's 940 megabits per second. The amount of detail and information there is huge, and that's in 4K, not 8K. And if I'm just shooting all eye in 4K, let's say HQ or 30, then I'm looking at about, 470 megabits per second. Again, that's a factor of 4. So the difference between 100 and 120, I wouldn't even sweat it. What I would do is I would look at them both side by side, pixel peep, see if one creates more artifacts than the others, and I'm willing to bet that they're both pretty much very similar. You're not going to notice a huge difference. And Stop the FOMO, if this is also for YouTube, with YouTube's compression, any other sort of artifacts are going to be just, well, you're not really, I don't think you're going to notice them. When possible, though, you want to have each camera set up as close to the same color profiles, the same settings, the same codecs, all that sort of stuff, and it just makes life a little easier in post. But I don't think, based on what you're telling me, you're going to have a problem. Now, obviously, 120 does give you more information, but it's not that much more. Still, you're using IPB. Now, again, for your YouTube videos where you're standing most of the time, I don't think that IPB is bad. If you're doing a lot of stuff outside, you're shooting a lot of wilderness, you want to capture a lot of detail, you've got subject movement or other movement in the frame, let's say just the camera's panning, then all eye is definitely the way to go. Nick asks, you should host some competitions and critiques. Critiques are common enough, but competitions are few and far between on YouTube. Who will you ship prizes with? Just so I know who will be delivering my mics. Thank you for this question and comment. It's questions and comments like this that help me change my channel. I was listing, I can't remember who told me this, it was a couple of days ago, and I think I've got a question coming up, so we'll know soon, that had suggested I do some more rants or I do something a little different. And I was watching the season ending of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, and some things really bugged me. And I thought, well, this is filmmaking, this applies, and I can do a rant on what it's about. I can do a rant saying why I hate it, and then I can address some basic filmmaking techniques and ways you could overcome this. So when you go about doing your work, don't do this. And it's amazing when people have millions and millions of dollars per episode. The effects are great, the uniforms are great, the visuals in every way, the set design are terrific, and then things like the script just fall apart on something really just asinine. So I'm going to try and do one of those on Sunday. We'll see how well that goes. But as far as doing competitions, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Now, I'm already doing prizes for every 10,000 subscribers, and those prize giveaways are going to be a little bit more frequent. As my channel gets bigger, it'll happen a whole lot quicker. And who am I going to ship by? Well, it really depends on what country. Most likely, I'm going to default with Canada Post and use a tracking number, because that's obviously important, or I could use a courier. Although where I'm living right now in Ontario, we are completely shut down. I wouldn't say we're not allowed to go out. I would say that we're told that to stay inside unless you're going out for medical reasons, unless you're going out for groceries, or if you're going out for exercise. And all stores are essentially shut down except for what is considered essential services. So I'm really curious to know how I'm going to get my package shipped out. I might have to use some more expensive options like UPS or FedEx, because they will actually come to the door. I can do everything online, but places like Canada Post. I don't know if I can go to the post office, but don't worry about that. I am going to be shipping it relatively soon. I just checked my subscriber count and it's 19,723. So that's just about 280 away. So I think within the next week I'll have the prize. I'll do a giveaway, and I'm really excited about that. But in terms of competitions, I think it's a really good idea that maybe somebody can submit me a photo, or a bunch of people can submit photos, and I can pick one and we can talk about it. I can talk about what I like about it. It might be better to do video though, because I'm not an expert when it comes to photography, and I feel like I'm ill-equipped and ill-prepared to criticize other people's work. But when it comes to video is something I feel a lot more, well, it's like entering a nice warm bathtub. It just puts a smile on your face, right? So I feel comfortable with video. But really good question. There's a lot of changes coming. Stay till the end. Behind the scenes, I'm going to talk about a couple of changes coming up for the channel. There's some exciting stuff coming soon. Rodrigo asks, have you tried using the false color exposure method with the Ninja 5? And what light setup do you use or recommend? When I had the Ninja 5, no, I didn't. I didn't need it, not for the setting I was using, but it's there, it's nice, it's got a lot of features, and I really liked it. Now, in terms of my lighting setup, I've actually got 9 lights. I have 3 Godox flat panels. 2 of them are right out in front of me, and they're facing each other, slightly tilted, so I don't get a lot of glare off my face. And there's one right above me, angled down at a 45-degree angle. Then right here, I've got a ring light, which aims down at a 45-degree angle, and then about a 30-degree slant down. And of course, I've got 5 accent lights on the bookshelf. 4 of them are colored and 1 is white, aiming up at the plant. In terms of what do I recommend? Well, it really depends on what your budget is, what you're trying to achieve. I started this lighting system on the cheap, whereas now it's good $500 to $700 that I've got invested. And I like these smaller lights because I was able to piece things together slowly, and because they're LEDs, they don't cost me a lot in hydro. Now, in terms of what could you do, again, it depends on your budget. I've got a new light. It's over there. I'm going to be doing a review on it. It's an $800 light. It's a single light. It's got the grid lines in it. You can control the intensity. It's one of those lights where I can be doing a review or a report outside. It's shining on me, and it be the only light that I need. So I'm hoping to do a review on that next week, but I need to get a stand. I've ordered a stand from Amazon, so I'm waiting for that to show up, and then I'll do that video review. But lighting is very much, it is a little bit personal. I do like these accent lights. I highly recommend them. I use the Ulanzi ones. You can see them in the link down below. They're very cheap. They're around $20, and they're good for lighting up things like bookshelves. I highly recommend those. But your front, you definitely want to be lit from the front. You want a little bit of shade on one side, and you want to have some separation from the background, so some light on the head and shoulders area really helps as well too. If you'd like more information about lighting, give me a comment in the question down below, and then next week I can elaborate just a little bit more. Thanks for the question. And our last question is from Stop the FOMO, our second question of the day. What big camera related purchase are you looking forward to in 2021? I really love how you word your questions. Not everybody knows this, but when I went to college, I minored in English. And even though I speak English, I think I recognize the importance of learning how to write and communicate, not just in written form, verbally, in different business forums. And so I pay very close attention to words, which is why I was giving Sigma a hard time, because they use a possibility. And when you're trying to tell people that something's coming, you don't say a possibility because, okay, well, that's vague. We'll discount that. But Stop the FOMO, and again, let me flash up what he said here. What big camera-related purchase, not camera purchase, but camera-related purchase, which opens up everything. I could talk about a new studio. I could talk about lighting, computers, the M1 chip. So he really gave me the freedom to go where I wanted to. And you know my surprising answer? I'm not excited about anything. I mean, in terms of purchase, I'm excited about what Sony's coming out with the A9 Mark III, the A7 IV, what Panasonic's going to do with their restructuring and what they're going to do with the GH6 if that's coming out. What Canon's doing. I think Canon's on a tear. They sat down and did nothing for almost 10 years, coming out with good cameras, but that pretty much were behind the competition. But with their 2015 to 2019 strategic plan, you could see that they had the right ingredients there, and now we're seeing the benefits of that 4 or 5 year strategic plan in 2020, and we're going to see it in 2021 too. So I'm very excited about what's to come out, but in terms of what I want to purchase, okay, well, RF 1200mm f8. Now, if that's $10,000, I won't be getting it, but I'm really curious. If it's under $2,000, I definitely will. I don't know if it's going to be an STM. I can't remember if it's an STM. If it is an STM, then yeah, it's likely below $2,000. I think Canon's trying to take a lot of some of their more expensive lenses that were very expensive but didn't sell and make them available to the public by doing simple things like they did with the 600mm and 800mm. I mean, I look around my studio. You know, as I look over at the Mac, I am very much curious about the M1, but I do have an iMac Pro. It's more than enough for editing what I've got. So unless someone's going to give me one, and they're not, I'm probably just going to stick with the Mac that I've got. I'm still itching to get a Ninja 5, but it's tough to buy. I just bought some more stuff yesterday. Bought a bunch of batteries. Yes, they're for the channel. Yes, it's only $15, but again, it's nickel and diming, right? I bought a new stand, and I bought some USB adapters so I can take advantage of more products that are shipping with USB-C cables, and I can work with them on USB A and B. I'm just trying to think even when I saw this question, I couldn't think of what I really wanted to get because I've got my camera, I've got my lenses. Oh yeah, no, there is another lens. I'm very much interested in a 16mm lens, maybe 18mm. I know Sanyang's got one. It's around $650, so I'm going to take a little bit of a closer look at that because as the weather warms up and as, you know, we're able to go outside a bit more and not have to worry about our health, I'd like to do some more vlogging. But right now, not interested in vlogging. So yeah, definitely. The only thing I wonder is when I go non-OEM is a lot of these lenses are designed for photographers and their focus motors are usually quite loud. So any lens that I get, like a 16mm, I need it to be an almost silent focus motor. That's just kind of my thing. But what else? Is there anything else? Sorry, I know that's annoying. I mean, a trip to Japan. I'd like to go to Japan. It's camera related. Go visit the major sites like Canon and whatnot. You know what I would really like, and this is not something I could purchase, but I would really love to be able to do some interviews with people at Canon, Nikon, and Panasonic, all the major camera companies. And I'm not talking about the PR people. I'm talking about the people who dream, the visionary people and even some of the engineers that come up with these ideas, how to solve problems, because I think that is what these tools allow us to do. They allow us to create content. They allow us to be artists. They allow us to express ourselves, and that's really, really exciting. Now, my wife is upstairs and she's walking around a little bit. Can you guys hear that through this? I've been playing around with the microphone and I've had some problems lately. I actually tried hanging the lavalier mic from the ceiling just this far away from me, but unfortunately it picks up a bit of a tinny echo as my voice is reverbing off of the HVAC system. So as you can see, I'm wearing a white shirt here. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better. I'm thinking my problems earlier could have been related to using the older lav mic and that maybe it wasn't screwed into the base unit properly. But as this is the last question, now I'm going to transition into behind the scenes. Cue graphic. All right, so in this episode of Behind the Scenes, you'll notice that this was a much shorter video, and that's simply because of CES this week. I had to produce a video every week, and each video requires at least 2 hours of time, leaving me very little time to actually put together the questions, and most of the questions answered today were actually taken from leftovers from last week. A little bit frustrating, but sometimes you've just got to prioritize and pick and choose. So I thought, well, instead of not doing one, let's trim them down. Let's do about 10 of them. And so that's why it's a bit of a shorter week. The next thing I want to talk about is merch. Merchandise is coming. I'm going to start with a hat. Now, what I've been told, and I can't tell you too many details right now, but an announcement is coming soon. I do have a prototype hat being sent to me. And when it gets here, I'm going to take a look at it, see how close it is to this guy, because this is what I'm modeling it off of. And then I'm going to show it to you guys and let you know, or to not let you know, let you see it and then tell me what you think. And I'm really excited about getting these out the door. Now, one thing I can tell you right now, pricing wise, I think they're going to be around somewhere between $25 and $30 per unit. That doesn't include taxes and shipping. And we've got to talk a bit more about the shipping, because the one thing I wanted to do with shipping is, let's say you bought a couple of items, I want to be able to offer free shipping, but depending on where you are, that may or may not be possible. So I've got different zones. There's the Americas, there's Europe, there's India, there's different parts of the world, and what happens is they're produced in that particular geographic area, so it's being produced locally to wherever you are, and then being shipped out from there. So delivery times can be anywhere from, a week to 14 days. So hopefully next week I'll have a prototype in hand to be able to show you. And then eventually we want to open up other things like golf shirts like these. My wife buys these for me. These are really expensive, but they're very comfortable. They never need ironing. I think she gets them from Lululemon, but they're very, very nice. I want to do other things like hoodies, t-shirts, but more will come. Start simple. But there's something else I want to come up with too. I've had many complaints from people, including Popcorn, who said, look, I'm not getting notification of your new videos when it comes out. And I feel bad because Popcorn, and you as well, you're always watching my videos. You're always commenting. You're always engaging. And I feel like my hands are tied behind my back and, my people aren't getting the notifications. There's nothing I can do about that. Well, that's not true. So the same person that's handling the merch is coming up with a system, and it's going to be an engagement system. It's going to integrate with YouTube. So if you put a comment on either one, it's going to show up. But you're going to be able to put in a phone number, or you can put in an email address, and then as soon as I publish a video, boom, you're going to get notified. So you can be one of the first in there to say first, number one, or some other catchphrase that you would like to do. All right, this item here has got nothing to do with cameras, but I want to share with you something that one of my friends and colleagues is working on, just from the sheer amazement of it. A friend of mine, his name is David, and he's actually built his own operating system. He's built it from the ground up. He's in machine language. He's not borrowing libraries from any other operating system. It's close. If you're familiar with Linux and Unix, it's very similar in how look and feel to those operating systems. But what's really amazing about this is that he's done the whole thing in machine code. He's got it working. He's got it working in VMs. The USB apparently has been a bit of an issue. But in the VM it works. But when he uses it on real hardware, he's got some issues. So eventually, soon he's going to be putting that on GitHub. And I'm curious, is anybody out there interested in joining the beta team? This is something, if you think back to when Linus first released his early versions of his OS, that's where David's at right now. And there's a lot to do. There's a lot of documentation, which I'm going to help him with. There's video aspects. There's all sorts of stuff. But if you're interested in joining the team, being part of the early beta team where you can just try it out, test it out, poke it till it hurts kind of thing, let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm just amazed. Here's somebody that I know that I work with on a regular basis, creating such an amazing thing. A couple of weeks ago, somebody said, wouldn't it be great to customize a camera? Well, here's somebody who's created a customized operating system, and it's designed to be low power, small. It's got a niche that the other Unix variants don't have. So that's really, really exciting. So let me know if you're interested in helping out. Now, I can't remember here because I've stopped scrolling here. Yeah, that's kind of it for this week. So I will reiterate that for the next couple of weeks coming up, I'm expecting announcements. I'm expecting leak specifications. I was expecting 2021 to return to normal a little bit more, but from what we're seeing around the world, things are getting worse, even though the vaccine is out there. So I think that rumor that we got from Canon rumors saying that things are going to slow down a little bit for Canon and others, I think that's very much a real possibility. I still think the Olympics are going to go ahead. I think all the athletes are going to get their vaccinations. That's going to go ahead. But in terms of camera releases, I think what the companies are going to do is they're going to pick and choose their cameras strategically. I think that the top-end flagship cameras like the R1, the A9 Mark III, the Z9, those cameras, they're going to release it because that gets them attention. That will get them ready for the Olympics. If the Olympics are canceled or postponed again, then sure, those can get pushed deep into Q2, quarter two, deep into the second half of the year. But you see, the cameras that sell the most are the cameras like the A6100, the Canon 90D. These are the cameras that sell an awful lot. So I'd really be curious if Canon does go ahead and release the two entry-level R system cameras. An APS-C camera, I don't know if that's as much important. And on the, well, see, Nikon's already released quite a bit. It's in terms of lenses. Now, and the same thing with Canon. Are they going to go ahead with as many lenses? It's really hard to say, but if you subscribe to my channel, as soon as I hear news, I'm always checking the sites. I'm checking Canon rumors, I'm checking 43 rumors, I'm checking Sony rumors, I'm checking I can't even remember them all. Plus, I'm also checking the press, Digital Camera World, Pixel Peepers, or it's not Pixel Peepers, Petapixel. I'm checking, believe it or not, every day I'm scanning all that stuff. I'm looking for news so that when you come here, all the big stuff is wrapped up in a nice little ball, as I did with CES. There was no TVs, there was no strange gizmos or anything like that. I just focused on here's what's camera related at CES and outside of CES. But here we are at the end of another. Sorry for that abrupt cut, but I just hit my 30-minute record limit again. That is very frustrating, and yes, an external recorder will solve that, but still frustrating nonetheless. But some feedback for you. Now, I don't know what temperature it is down here, but I would say it's somewhere between 60 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. I saw the overheat warning, and so and it had 1 minute left, so I had 1 minute left to record, and I thought, well, I'm not going to play around with it, even though I only have a few minutes left. So now I'm recording on 4K, 30 frames per second, without high quality mode turned on. And I don't think you're really going to notice the difference, but if it was below 60, I wouldn't have that problem. All the tests I've done with this camera, if you're recording below 60 degrees or around 18, 19 degrees Celsius, it doesn't overheat at all. But on that little bit of a bombshell, it's not really a bombshell, we all know about the overheating on the R5, right? But that is it for now. Don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win the Synco Lav, S6E, and M3 shotgun microphones. I'll be awarding these two prizes to one lucky viewer probably within about a week once I reach 20,000 subscribers. And like I said earlier in the video, I'm at 19,725, so I'm not that far away. I think definitely a week, if the news keeps coming, we'll get there. And then of course, for every 10,000 subscribers after that, I'll be offering up a different and better prize all the way up to 100,000 subscribers. Now, just to let you know, I've already got the prizes ready for 30,000. They're here, they're in my studio. You're gonna love this. I've got 2 prize bundles. Yeah, that's right, bundles, and there's 2 of them. The first is an Angelbird prize bundle. Not going to tell you what's in them yet, although you might guess. If you can guess if you can actually guess the exact thing in the description below, you'll earn an extra entry into the draw. And the other prize bundle is a Ulanzi LED light package, and that's really cool too. So that's coming up soon. And of course, once we reach 100,000 subscribers, I'm giving away a brand new Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera to one lucky viewer. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate your comments. We'll see you again soon.